So my recorder turned up, which is good news. The sound quality ought to be a little bit better than last week. And as I record this, it is the second day of fall orientation. So our new first years and transfers are on campus now. They've been here since Saturday morning. And yesterday, I actually was going to take this recorder with me because we have a ceremony that we do on the first day of orientation near the end of the day, and it includes a devotional. And ordinarily, our campus pastor would deliver the devotional, but he was on the road because he was dropping his middle son off at college in a neighboring state, and so he asked me to fill in for him. And I was going to record the devotional that I gave, but there was a lot of hurly-burly with the technology, with the microphone, and in the process of figuring that out, I just completely forgot to turn the recorder on. So what I decided to do for this week's podcast episode was to recreate what I said to the newly arriving freshmen and transfers, because it was all about community. And I guess you could loosely say that these are things that have been on my mind just because I spent last week authoring this and committing it to memory. So originally, the campus pastor had advised me to go about 10 minutes. But it was, this ceremony happened at 5 o'clock in the afternoon at the end of a very long day where they had been talked at a lot, and the temperature was over 90 degrees, and we were outside, and I could tell that they wanted me to do the tightest version of it possible so that everybody could get back into someplace air-conditioned. So I was originally going to start with a story, but I dumped the story because it wasn't that entertaining anyway, and I just went straight to starting with the scriptures. So Paul wrote to the church at Ephesus, and in chapter 2 of Ephesians, he spoke directly to the Gentiles in the church. And he said, "So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens of the saints and members of the household of God, built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole structure, being built together, grows into a temple to the Lord. In him you also are being built into a dwelling place for God by the Spirit." And so what Paul was telling the Gentiles was, God built for you a dwelling place, and it's a dwelling place with a lot of history. And you came here to find that there were people who had arrived ahead of you, and they seemed to understand all of this history, and it may be tempting to feel as though you somehow don't fit. But you should be reassured that actually God is also building you into a dwelling place for himself. And I wouldn't blame you, newly arrived first years and transfers, for maybe feeling something of the same way. This campus has some history, and the people who have been mentoring you through orientation, they got here before you and they understand how everything works. But the same reassurance that Paul provided to the Gentiles at Ephesus applies to you as well. God is building you into a dwelling place for himself. Because it doesn't happen in the blink of an eye, because you have to be a little bit patient until that feeling of newness wears off, let me give you a look at how it's going to unfold if this year is at all typical. This is a tiny campus, and there are not that many people here, so very quickly you'll learn where everything is, and you'll learn enough names that you don't feel like you're a newcomer anymore. You'll blink hard, and December will get here, and then it's January, and you can't believe that you've got one academic term completely under your belt, and there's only 7 left to go. And just a few weeks into the second term, you'll realize that a group of people who are very composed and understand how everything works and have been unbelievably generous with you are now about to commit the most unspeakable betrayal imaginable. They're going to graduate. And you're going to have this struggle that every first year and every transfer has at the end of that first year. How is this school ever going to be the same when he's not here anymore? How am I going to come back in August and have any kind of meaningful experience when she's graduated and left? The 3 months of the summer go by, and when you come back in August, there's a new group of people standing here on the quad. And even though, you should go be friendly, you should go introduce yourselves, it's possible you'll even pitch in and help with orientation. I know that we have a lot of sophomores working on our orientation team this year. But there's going to be this little tiny pocket in the back of your head that says, look, I have only now worked out my mental picture of what my college is, and all these new people, although they look interesting, they actually look kind of exciting, they don't fit. They're not part of the understanding I had worked out for myself. But that wears off quickly too, and December arrives, and then January is here, and a few weeks into that, it suddenly hits you that another group is about to graduate, slightly closer in age to you, and at the moment they graduate, you are now an upperclassman. That summer flies by way too quickly. And when you come back here in August, and there's yet another group of people standing here for this exact ceremony, the thought that's going to hit you is, they look so young. They're babies. Was I ever that young? And then you get busy with your schoolwork, and it's December, and it's January, and the only students left who've been here longer than you, they graduate out. And when you come back at the end of the summer and once again find people standing here on the quad, that's when it'll hit you that this is God's miracle for this college. Some of God's miracles run on schedule. Every morning, the Israelites woke up and the ground was covered with manna because God was providing for them. And every August, we wake up and the quad is covered with first years and transfer students. And then we eat them. No, that was a joke. We're not going to eat you. Not all of you. So sometimes you have to be a little bit patient until you get some momentum in that process of working off the feeling of newness. And so let me give you a little guidance while you're waiting for that to happen. You're going to hear over the next 4 years a lot of talk about community. And it's not idle talk. We really do believe in and treasure community here. But what I've seen is that the way that looks with different arriving classes of first years and transfers, it looks different. A lot of years, the way that looks is people go straight for the ones with whom they can make really powerful friendships, the ones with whom they hit it off. And that's really absolutely wonderful. God designed us to be blessed by friendship. And I want every David to find a Jonathan, and I want every Naomi to find a Ruth. But don't lose sight of the fact that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount that if you only love the ones who love you, what good is that? Even the pagans do that. He said, love those who hate you and pray for those who treat you spitefully. And if you look around, there are some people in this crowd, maybe a person you're standing next to, who are trying to outrun or maybe outgrow a lot of pain in their life. And it may be in their earlier years they had to come up with ways of surviving, and they've brought those survival strategies here to this campus, and they haven't sensed that they can turn them loose yet. And those people, it would be very hard to have relationships with. They can be very bristly. Sometimes they can be a little dishonest. Sometimes you find that in trying to carry out just the ordinary events, the ordinary developments of friendship, you get hurt a few times. And other times, the difficulties with the friendship are not necessarily about outrunning pain. Some people on this campus, if this class is at all representative, the architecture of their neurons just means that when they view social cues, they see them differently. It's possible to translate between your way of seeing social cues and theirs, but it can be very frustrating. It can lead to a lot of misunderstandings. And even when it works really, really well, it can be downright exhausting. But we have had, in some years, first years and transfers arrive who their top priority was to love the ones who are hard to love. And this may be one of those years where you do devote a lot of your time to those powerful friendships, but also to the people who are hard to love. But even then, I don't think you're done yet. Jesus said, don't call me Lord unless you're going to obey my commands. And a scribe came to Jesus and said, okay, well, out of all the commands, which ones are the top priority? And Jesus said, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And we spend our entire lives figuring out how to do that. But then he said, love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't say the easy to love neighbor. He didn't say the hard to love neighbor. He didn't put a limit on it. And we have a whole lot of students on this campus who are not hard to love. They're not trying to outgrow pain. They're not trying to work through social cues and understanding social cues, but neither are they particularly easy to love. They may be the kind of people who it's easy to walk right past. A couple of hours ago, I was part of a reception with your parents, and I talked to the parents. In about half an hour, I talked to the parents of 10 different newly arrived students, and I kept count. 8 of the 10 sets of parents, when I asked, what can you tell me about your student? What can you tell me that'll help me teach them? 8 out of 10 said, well, they're very quiet. They're very introverted. And my sample size is too small, but 8 out of 10 is pretty lopsided. there will be, I think, a lot of students, a lot of your classmates, who it's just very easy to walk past. And my challenge to you, I want to challenge you to be detectives. I want to challenge you to be mindful. I want to challenge you to not let anybody in this class be the one that you just walked past. Now, don't take that too literally, or you'll never make it to class on time. But the way that happens, typically, the way it shouldn't happen but does, is you walk past them one day, you smile, you know their name, but that's all you know about them. The next day, you walk past them again, you smile. Pretty soon, it's been 4 years, and you've walked past them hundreds of times, and you don't know anything more about them than their name. One of the ways this campus is often described that I don't like is it's often described as a small town where everybody knows everybody. And that's not nearly enough. The demons knew Jesus by name. Just knowing who you are is not enough. What we should become is we should become the neighborhood where everybody looks out for everybody. So when Jesus moves through this campus, which he does, his word teaches us that where 2 or more are gathered in his name, he's here among us. And when that happens, he should be able to look around and say, these in this neighborhood call me Lord, and they are right to do so, because I gave them a command and they've obeyed it. The command I gave them was to love one another. By this, all the world would know that they were my followers by the love they had for one another. Now, there's one more thing I want to say before we get on to the ceremony, and that is that this college accepts students with a maturing Christian faith, but also students with many other faiths or no faith at all. And there are some people here in this crowd who came here because of scholarships, or because it had the right academic programs, or because of where it was located. Let me talk to you just for a minute. Welcome. Welcome. You are fellow citizens with the people standing next to you. We are going to teach you about the Christian faith. That is part of the core curriculum here. And some people, when taught about the Christian faith, if we do it the right way, if we do it effectively and sensitively, a lot of people make a decision in favor of it. But a lot of people also come to the end of their time here and graduate and don't. And we will love you just as much. But for you, all this talk I've been putting out about how we should build community here because that's how we obey Jesus, that may not motivate you very much. So let me very quickly come at the same ideas from a slightly different direction. When I was a kid, I used to want to have dessert before dinner. And if we're perfectly honest, I wanted to have dessert instead of dinner. And I wanted to have recess instead of school. And so you have the option to charge straight for the people who are going to be your best friends and to spend all your time with them. And if you do that, over your time here, 2, 3, 4 years, you're going to make some unforgettable memories. But if you stretch yourself a little further, and you also take up the challenge and the discipline and the hard work of loving the people who are hard to love. Let me tell you what I discovered as I grew up. Maybe this has happened to you as well. I used to want dessert instead of dinner. I used to want recess instead of school. But as I grew, I discovered that you can take fresh ingredients and put them together into a meal that is healthy, that builds you up, makes you stronger. And if you know what you're doing, you can even make it taste good. And I've discovered that I can work hard at things, and I can be disciplined, and I can find fun along the way in the hard work. But then that sense of accomplishment when I see what all my hard work brought me, that's the real lasting and deep down satisfaction. So you really can run straight to the people who are going to be your best friends and spend all your time with them, and you will make some unbelievable memories. But if you invest time in learning how to love the people who are hard to love, that will pay off for the rest of your life. It'll pay off with difficult coworkers. It'll pay off for any of you who are planning to get married. It will pay off for any of you who are planning to have children. This is your communication professor talking. I think probably one of the biggest reasons our divorce rate is as high as it is that too many people did not bother to learn how to love those who are difficult to love before they married and before they started their family. And then as for the last part of the challenge I gave your classmates, the invitation that you ally yourself with us to try to build a very tight-knit community here. Well, let me put that this way. You may have noticed that in this chapter in history, we are not very good. If you follow the news, you may have noticed this. We are not very good at disagreeing, but still being civil with one another. We've let a whole lot of disagreements that should not be quite as life or death as they are, we've let them divide us. And we've let them push us into becoming very, very ugly and becoming very alienated from one another. You have the opportunity on this campus. This is a laboratory. It's a petri dish for you to learn how to weave together community that is so strong and so supportive that it'll hold up against those strains. I would advise you not to listen to the I Have a Dream speech for the 1,000th time next February, but instead to read some of what Dr. King said about the beloved community. He was the most public face of a movement that started out with absolutely no power, but at the heart of their strategy was the building of the beloved community. And you, in your time here, you can participate and have a lot of lessons learned from weaving together a strong, supportive community. Or you can spend the next 4 years spending all of your time with your very best friends, have a very good time, but look back and wonder what could have been. And then at that point, that was the end of the devotional, and we started the ceremony. And after the ceremony, I said kind of a long-winded prayer, which did not have a lot to do with community. So that is my contribution this week. And next week, I imagine that my thoughts will have a little bit more to do with the state of how we are handling public life.